think again, when you ask questions like like Coogan does, it's kind of like a case of if the strategy and the package was right, would you step aside? And he said, look, it's a business, etc., etc. But the focus is on Alexander Usyk, and until something's presented to us to present to AJ and 258 as being something that could make sense, I don't want to present that to Anthony Joshua because he's probably going to tear my head off because all he wants to do is fight Alexander Usyk. But if it leads to an undisputed fight against the winner of that fight, or he's got a new trainer, there's all kinds of things to consider. But I can't tell you like we're out there looking for a step aside or hoping that comes in. But if something that made sense for the career of Anthony Joshua allowed me to present that to him, then I would present that to him.
What's good, family? So mash the like button, subscribe, and lick off the bell. So we just heard there from your man's Eddie Hearn. Listen, people, like you've seen by the title, Team AJ are going through it right now. And I don't care what no one says. If you are also high IQ and you can read vocal cues, yeah, and if you can read the emotion on Eddie Hearn's face, bear in mind as well, this wasn't the first time. Eddie Hearn's been saying similar things for the last few days, yeah, and like I said, if you can read between the lines here, if you can read between the lines, you can hear in his voice that he's essentially begging for someone to reach out and give them an offer. How do we know this? Well, I put to you this situation. Again, if you can analyse behaviour over time, when behaviour significantly changes, something has to drive that change. There's some sort of purpose in there. People don't change their actions for nothing. So, for example, what do we know? Well, when AJ lost to Ruiz, guess what? We had a exactly the same situation. Ruiz was trying to run off and fight Wilder for undisputed. Guess what? There weren't even a talk of it. Yeah, never once did you hear AJ or Eddie Hearn say, well, I got a triangle, and sometimes you gotta get the price, and sometimes you gotta get the quality, and other times I'm a businessman, and I want to be the best businessman. We hear many NFL, wow, yeah? So my point is, yeah, never once did you hear any of that. And in fact, like I was saying, when Ruiz was playing them funny style games, guess what? Team AJ filed a lawsuit, which I leaked on YouTube. The lawsuit got filed because AJ lost, I think it was June 3rd or something. And by July 14th, 6 weeks later, yeah, Ruiz was trying to play games and whatever else, and guess what? By the end of the month, so within 8 weeks, the whole lot was wrapped up. The date for December 7th, 2019 was locked in 5 months in advance. Because Eddie Hearn went to court and Ruiz got moshed in court. Yeah? They thought they was Team Ruiz thought they were smart. Al Heyman thought he was smart and he got quashed 100%. Hearn at that point in time was way too strong. But anyway, the point is, people, do you remember the narrative back then? Back then, there wasn't even the media didn't even ask the question because it was no doubt. Now though, look at the significant change. Now all of a sudden, well, if it's a business decision, we're not looking for offers, but if a great offer came on my desk, aka, please Frank Warren, send an offer, we're desperate for an offer. Because think about it, from Team AJ's point of view, Eddie Hearn isn't a stupid negotiator, and anyone knows in negotiation, you have the upper hand if someone comes to you. Eddie Hearn can't go to Frank Warren and say, please give us an offer, because he's at that point in time, he's got absolutely no bargaining chips, and they'll throw him pennies. Whereas if Frank Warren reaches out, at least then they can Team AJ can act bougie. And that's why I think Team AJ are even bothering with the whole notion of, we only want the Usyk fight. YB, what do you mean? How would them lying about only wanting the Usyk fight play in their favour? Well, it gives them leverage. They can say, no, sorry Frank, we only want the Usyk fight. So AKA, it's going to take a big offer. That makes sense. If Team AJ say, we don't want the Usyk fight, we're desperate for step aside, then Frank Warren can just play games and say, you know, we'll give you 500 grand, for example. But if they try and, oh no, we already want the Usyk fight, it gives them negotiational leverage. And like I said, Eddie Hearn's been doing this. He's learnt from the best of them. He ain't stupid when it comes to negotiations. That said, when you got 190 IQ Donny called the YB out here, yeah, oops, the whole lot gets shut down, 100%. I sniffed it from a few days ago. The body language, the vocal cues, it's way off. I'm sorry. Especially when, like I said, you compare it to December 2019. I don't remember doing one video about step aside. Not one. In fact, the only video I did was when Eddie Hearn moshed him in court. For even, think about it, Eddie Hearn filed a suit for Andy Ruiz and Deontay Wilder even thinking of doing one. Now Eddie Hearn's gone from suing to actively saying, yeah, this is the equivalent, yeah, of Eddie Hearn saying back in June 2019, yeah, well, if Ruiz and Deontay Wilder give us a good offer, we'll think about it. Do you see how that's a massive change? And it's not, a lot of people, a lot of AJ super fans will say, no, YB, AJ's 100% on it. This is just Eddie Hearn. Oops, we now know you heard the same out of AJ. And something that I've used often to expose Tyson Fury's team has been what? Consistent narratives. Because what I believe behind closed doors, these guys, which makes sense, they're a team, don't forget. But when I start hearing a consistent narrative, i.e., we've heard exactly the same thing come out of both of their mouths. Oh, we don't want to step aside, but if the offer's good. Both AJ and Eddie Hearn saying the same thing. The same way Frank Warren, John Fury and Tyson Fury back in March this year were saying, no, the AJ fight can't happen because of C19. When I start hearing a narrative, my ears pop up. Because that means that they're working in, they've all got a little plan worked out. Now, do I think Team AJ have said yes? Or do I think AJ's told Eddie Hearn to say, yes, get me to step aside 100%? No. What I think's been said is the following. I mean, to be honest, they said as much. I think what's been said is, AJ said, listen, if you can get me a good bag for step aside, we'll take that. If not, then listen, if not, we haven't got no other option than to go with the rematch anyway. So, that's what I believe's been said. But the point is, people, it's different. It's fundamentally a 180 spin from July 2019. And the fact for me is as well, another key flag for me, which shows how the behaviour is bookie from Team AJ, is what do we know? Like I said earlier, Eddie Hearn was suing Ruiz 4 weeks or 5 weeks after the fight had happened, because he wanted to get the details locked in. Now before, I think it was at the start of August, the December 7th rematch, December 7th 2019 rematch was booked in. It was booked in 5 months before. It was booked in within 8 weeks after the first fight. Now guess what? AJ's fight with Usyk happened, I believe, September 29th, something like that. It's now been 9 weeks since. And there's no talk of no date, there's no talk of no venue, there's no talk of nada. Why is that relevant? Well, this shows that Team AJ are clearly they're leaving things in place for a colossal or for a great offer to come in. Does that make sense? There's a reason Team AJ never mess around with dates. They're quick, as they've proven historically. It doesn't take them 10 weeks to get a rematch locked in, especially with someone. I mean, think about it. Team AJ got the Ruiz rematch with litigation. Obviously, when you're litigating someone, it takes a lot longer because there's friction. Ruiz was playing games for about 3 weeks of that. So AJ vs Ruiz 2 was booked, dated, the whole lot within 10 weeks after the fight. Including litigation time, including Ruiz playing games for half of that time. But now, Usyk and AJ 2 has had just as long, and there ain't no sign of nothing. And that's with two parties who are working together well. What does this tell you? Why isn't Team AJ steaming forward? Well, you know why. Because if they steam forward and book the date and book the venue, then they can't go back on that. Once they've locked in the contractual differences, there's too much risk and there's too much cost. It's not going to happen. So they're sitting out, waiting it out, hoping for an offer to come in. And in fact, I've got another video coming soon. Frank Warren leaked the fact that he said in the next 7 days there's going to be some big announcement to do with this situation. And that they are, i.e. Tyson Fury, is pushing for the Usyk fight. And they're happy to look at step aside. So it's all coming together nicely now. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone is on the same page. Now, what's my position on this? What is the YB's position on this one? All I can say is, like I said in my last video, oh how the mighty have fallen. I've been saying for many years that AJ's mindset and mentality is soft. But not only is his mentality and mindset soft, I've been saying the trajectory of his mindset and mentality is on an extremely steep downtrend. And this situation I've explained over the last 10 minutes illustrates that perfectly. 2 years ago, he wouldn't even have, it wasn't even a, you know what I'm saying? Step aside didn't even come up in the conversation. Now, he himself is sitting there talking about, yeah, well, I've got to look at it for the business. This shows you, in my opinion, a man who's looking to check out. He knows he ain't got what he used to have, whether that be that raw youthful motivation. He knows he hasn't got... No, listen, I'm not saying AJ isn't motivated to collect $30 million checks. Of course he is. I'm saying he isn't motivated to go to the trenches and become a Hall of Famer. Again, I'm not saying AJ doesn't love to train. I'm not saying he doesn't love to compete with amateurs. If that makes sense. He does. And I mean, look how he reacted after the Usyk loss. He said, oh, you know, it was great to get 12 rounds in. And AJ reminds me of a retired fighter who still goes to the gym on the weekends and has sparring. That's how it sounds to me. But the difference is he's getting paid $30 million. And these actions reflect that. It's all about the business now. And again, yes, he may believe he's passionate, but the actions don't lie, people. And the fact it came out of his own mouth is the bottom line. That should illustrate, if you're being unbiased and objective, that illustrates to you the deterioration in his own mentality. He went from it wouldn't even be talked about to now himself admitting it's a possibility if the offer's right. It's his obligation. It's his fiduciary obligation to get the most money possible. And I wouldn't mind. You might know I'm not a hater. I'm the first one to say, yeah, man, get your money. But I believe it has to be a fair exchange. Collecting record money, $50 million a pop. I'm not one of these people, yeah, who say, oh man, get the bag no matter what. No, I believe people should get a good bag for a good day's work. I don't believe you should just get the bag at all costs. No matter who you step on, no matter who gets shortchanged, get the bag. No. Even though social media would love you to believe that as long as you're getting the bag, that's all that matters. Not to me. I expect substance. Yeah? Unfortunately, the way the world is today, what I'm basically saying is I believe AJ's mindset is in a position where he should either, number one, actively make changes to try and get his mentality back, i.e. get the right people around him, or number two, retire. That's what I believe. I believe he's as good as retired right now. All he's doing is hanging around to soak up the coins. That's what I believe. Yeah? Whether he knows that objectively or not, because people can fool themselves. Oh no, I've still got it. Oh no, I do really want to fight. But we saw it, people. We saw it. Now, I'm not saying he's finished in as much as, do I believe if AJ had the right people around him? Do I believe if the YB was in the camp, things have a chance of, I'm not going to say, I'd never say it's 100% sure, but I'm saying there's over a 50% chance that we can go back to top tier Hall of Famer status. But without that, You've seen you've seen how things have devolved over the last years, both in the ring, mentally, technique-wise, the whole lot. Every aspect, and that's ultimately people. I remember for years people say things like, your mindset or your mentality can kind of it colours everything you do. It influences everything you do. And I used to kind of roll my eyes thinking, what are you talking about? But it's true. Man, your mindset is funny style. Everything else is funny style. His technique is funny style now. Yeah? His performance is funny style. Attitude, funny style. Every single thing, funny style. Bottom line. It really is the bottom line, people. And I mean, after the Klitschko fight, that was a big red flag. That was a big red flag. And any true trainer would have caught onto that and nipped it in the bud when he came out and said, after the fight, he went back with Rob McCracken and told Rob McCracken, listen, I don't want to have fights out anymore. At that point, he should have been told, listen, if you don't want to have fights like that anymore, you need to think about retiring, because it's dangerous to go in there and not be dangerous. I believe every time a man steps in the ring, he needs to believe he's the most dangerous man. Put it this way, when you saw Usyk versus AJ, who was the guy who looked like the guy who was dangerous? Who was the guy who looked like he believed he was dangerous? I'll tell you who it wasn't. It wasn't the guy who came out with all the advantages and got popped in the mouth and was shocked. Usyk had all the disadvantages. Nonetheless, because he stepped in the ring believing he was the baddest man, guess what? He came straight out and popped your mans right in the mouth. Mr. Anthony Johnson was shocked. Couldn't believe it. Because guess what? He stepped in the ropes. He didn't believe he was dangerous. He'd been taking pictures and hugging and kissing babies. AJ does not step in the ring dangerous. That's why he's talking to Clifton Mitchell. He's nervous. He's asking whether he's got the right game plan. That's not a guy who thinks he's dangerous. A guy who thinks he's dangerous steps in the ring and says, listen, game plan or no game plan, trained right or not trained right, this guy's getting it. Yeah? Totally ferocious in the ring and out. Yeah? That's not that guy no more. AJ's starting to think like Eddie Hearn, like an accountant, or thinking about the risk and whatever else. That's no good in this game. If you're worried about what happens in the ring, it's over for you, in my opinion. You should retire, because it's actually more dangerous. For example, look at AJ versus Usyk. He ends up in the 12th round on the ropes, rocking and rolling, with his eye bust. Now I put to you, AJ, a ferocious AJ, yeah, would have taken less damage, if that makes sense. Because going in there all scary style, the way AJ fights now, it's a victimized style. And when you're a victim, you get victimized. It's as simple as that. And like I said, I believe AJ trained the right way would take less damage than he would this other style, where you're nervous and you're worried, and you're thinking more about what's coming out than what's going in. It's almost like that cliche of the best, sometimes the best, or often, especially when you're someone like AJ, sometimes the best defense is offense. Yeah? That's the bottom line here. Especially in those kind of fights with people like Usyk. But the fact you still couldn't pull the trigger, that says it all for me. Like I've done low level sparring, and when you get popped in the mouth, the first instinct is to pop back. Never mind if you're going in there with someone smaller. I can only imagine. That should get you rock hard, I'd have thought. There should be nothing more enjoyable than seeing a man smaller than you pop you in the mouth. Wow, it's my lucky day. I've been given a reason to get off all over this small dude. Instead, you got popped in the mouth and you was thinking about your retirement and your check and the bag and not getting hurt and brain cells and that's all well and good. People say that boxing's a dangerous sport. If you actually look at the stats, there's many other jobs that are then more dangerous. If you're working in a mine, for example, or there's a whole bunch of jobs that are more dangerous. Oops, And guess what? There's a whole bunch of jobs who ain't paying $30 million a pop either. And that's why you got no excuse. We don't want to hear about this, all this other stuff you'd be talking about no more. Retire. Make changes or retire. Because all these things, Eddie Hearn begging for a step aside, it's not a good look. And it just shows you're just trying to milk it. I mean, Eddie Hearn was already setting, or has already been setting out the whatever. Talking about, oh, well, you know, even if we lose the belts and even if we don't beat Usyk, it's still a big fight. What kind of mentality is that? Even if we... And it's the thing, even AJ himself said it. I think he was in the post-fight press conference and said, even if I lose, are you telling me the Fury fight isn't still big? Or are you telling me, even if I lose, are you telling me you wouldn't watch the Fury fight still? It's like... It's mad. And by the way, let me, for you, anyone confused about what AJ's really saying is, are you telling me there isn't more coins to collect from other fights that I can milk? That's all I hear. Because if you ain't going in there to be totally ferocious, what are you doing? You're going in there to collect the coins, and that's it. And I'm sorry, but the last few fights, your man AJ has gone in there to collect coins. Now, even with the Pulev fight, yeah, he got the stoppage, but look how he got the stoppage. He wasn't getting the stoppage because he was staying dangerous. He got the stoppage by pure luck. Pure luck. He stumbled upon that stoppage. He didn't get the stoppage because he was totally ferocious on his job for 10 rounds. Most of that fight, he was worrying about flapping. He was nervous in there. Scary. And people say things like, yeah, but YB? He ain't got a chin, or YB? It's because he got hurt by Ruiz. He had to adapt. And listen, if all them things are true, if all them things that have happened in your life have made you soft, you need to retire. That's as simple as that. For example, Mike Tyson got beat a whole load of times. His style remained the same. Or sorry, the principles of his style remained the same. And then to be honest, even in the last few fights of his career, when Mike was clearly washed, he even admitted, I'm only doing this for the money. And that was evident in his performance. Because guess what? Whenever it got a bit tough, it just kind of rolled over. The same way, when it started getting tough for you against Usyk, you rolled over on the ropes, essentially. And the worst thing is, at least with Mike would come out and you'd get, even on Mike's worst day, you'd get 2-3 rounds of ferociousness. He'd give it a good go for 2 or 3 rounds. And by the way, Mike was giving it a go against big men like Lennox Lewis. Mike came out for 2-3 rounds against Lennox and give it good 2-3 rounds. That's more than can be said with you and Usyk. You gave it, I remember seeing you give it for about 20 seconds in one round. The whole 12-round fight, AJ put the hammer down for about 10-20 seconds at the most. That's a fact. And that there really sums up the situation we're in. AJ went from 100% hammer down to now you're lucky to get a smidgen of a percent. And this whole step aside shtick sums it up. This is a perfect reflection of where we are. Yeah? Anthony, the bag collector, Joshua. And right now, us fans have to vote with our feet. No one should buy any tickets and no one should buy any pay-per-views. I've heard people say, YB, how can you say that? A man's got to feed his kids. Get serious, you big muppets. YB, why are you trying to hurt a man's living? Are you having a laugh? And by the way, no one was worrying about my living, or our living, when he was gassing everyone up about KO, was he? Huh? Yeah? Was anyone worrying about the YB living when my man was gassing us up about William Hill coins? No, he wasn't. It was all fun and games. So don't give me that rubbish.